Welcome to Nonprofit Insider. My name is David Unger, and I'm pleased to be hosting a show with executive directors and key people of local nonprofits. I personally have worked in the nonprofit world for over 30 years. In those years, I've realized that the majority of the community does not know about the organizations that provide critical services and benefits to our community that we sometimes take for granted. Nonprofit Insider is a chance to hear about the organizations that touch so many in our community. The opinions expressed on Nonprofit Insider are not necessarily those of WMPG, its staff and underwriters, or of USM. I'm going to be on the road for the next couple weeks, and this show will be recorded, and we have some special shows coming up to take Nonprofit's place, and hopefully we'll see you back live in a couple of weeks. Hey, Deb, I also hear Frankie's going to be in Maine this weekend, so we're excited about that. Today, we have our guest, Nancy Cronin, Executive Director of the Developmental Disabilities Council of Maine. Hi, Nancy.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. And again, I'm sorry for the mix-up on the times. You've been sitting here for 6 hours waiting to get onto the show.
It's only been 6 hours.
Oh, okay. And as I said at the end of the last show, usually we don't have two shows back-to-back with the same topic, but that's the way the schedule works, so that's the way it is. So, how would you describe the Developmental Disability Council of Maine, or the DDC?
The Maine Developmental Disabilities Council is a federally funded quasi-state organization. So let me put that in real terms. Every state in the nation and territory has a Developmental Disabilities Council. We're funded federally under the Developmental Disabilities Act. Some developmental disability councils are nonprofits. Some DDCs are in the state government. We are not a nonprofit. We're a quasi-governmental agency. So we have a council that's like a board. We have staff, and we do all the work of a nonprofit. But we have a slightly different tax designation.
Right, so you're not actually an .org.
We are not. We are a .gov.
Okay, and so you actually don't raise money as a traditional nonprofit.
It is against the rules for us to fundraise. It is not, however, against the rules to accept gifts. So it is perfectly fine for people to decide this rocks, and we do, and send us a check. But it's not okay for me to ask for it.
I'm scratching my head, but that's okay. So, what type of services and programs do you offer?
We don't offer any services and programs.
Okay, so you're not allowed to raise money.
No.
You don't offer programs and services.
Right.
So what do you do?
What we do is we look and analyze the systems of care individuals with developmental disabilities use, from early intervention services for young children to health care for teenagers to adult services for adult services for individuals with autism or intellectual disabilities or cerebral palsy. So what are lives like? And we try to make them better. And we do that through 3 different ways. We work with the legislature and state government to write rules that help people live real lives in the community like everybody else. And this population, through the last number of hundreds of years, has been in institutions, which Maine does not have their institution anymore. It closed in the 90s. Or oftentimes oppressed. So we believe that everybody has value. Everybody with a developmental disability should be able to live the life in the community and be able to show and give their gifts. So we change rules, we advocate for different legislation, and we have the awesome opportunity to give funding to people. So we provide funding to agencies to try new things out. If you think you have an idea that might make people's lives really better, well, we might fund it, and you get to go and try it and collect data. If it works, we go and try to put it into rules and change the system that way.
So, just so we have full disclaimer, okay, I've told the audience before many times that I'm the part-time executive director of Speaking Up for Us, and we are funded A good portion of our funds come from the DDC.
That's right.
And so you and I work very closely together, and we get into these great philosophical conversations all the time about making lives better.
Yes.
So you've been the director there how long?
About 2 years.
What's been your aha moment so far?
I guess my aha moment has been, I have many major flaws, but one of my major flaws is I sometimes instinctively want to go Nike on people. I want to do the just do it mentality and ask the system to change fast, or my employees to change, or to do something different. And I realized a while back, it doesn't work. Nobody wants to just do it. Everybody wants...
Except Nike.
Except Nike. What people like to do is think that new ideas are their own. So my job as an executive director has been supporting people to think differently, realize they just thought differently, and cheerlead them on. And that's not an easy job to do.
No. Are you talking about the people in the system, or
Yeah.
the people with the disability?
Yep. Or the staff. Yep.
All of the above.
Everybody.
Okay.
Everybody. When you ask somebody to do something, and if they don't believe in it, they are not going to do as good of a job.
So putting it into community development, social work terms, it's providing them the ownership opportunity to the idea, so they feel part of the process rather than being dictated the process.
That's right. Or the legislature's bureaucracy getting buy-in.
Okay.
Significant buy-in in which everybody is on the same page. And what that has meant to me is not only do I have to change how I talk and how I work regularly, I also have to sometimes change my position. Sometimes I have to realize that what I'm trying to get the system to move isn't how it's ready to move.
Right. So you have to modify your plan in the process.
I do.
What's been the hardest thing that you've had to experience so far as an executive?
It's really keeping the balance. As an executive director, it's my job to live in the middle. The council or the board's job is to figure out where they want the vision of an organization. The staff's job is to do it and be in the mud. In some ways, as an executive director, I am in the middle. I have to understand the vision. I have to be able to translate it to the mud. And then I have to explain it to others as well.
It'd probably be helpful because you talk about the council several times already. What is the makeup of the council?
60% of the council are individuals with developmental disabilities. So when I say developmental disabilities, I mean individuals who have significant delays in 3 functional skills, daily living skills. So 61%, or a supermajority, are individuals with disabilities themselves or families of children with disabilities. The remaining 40% include our sister agencies, which are the Disability Rights Center, who advocate directly for people. Again, the council advocates for systems change.
Right.
So they advocate directly for people, or the University of Center for Community Inclusion, part of the University of Maine at Orono, which advocates for, or which tests ideas and research that feeds into how the system should be moving. So those are our sister agency. Now the federal government wants one more sister agency, which is the statewide self-advocacy group. In this case, it's speaking up for us. So the DD Act, the Developmental Disability Act, federal act, really is a 4-legged stool. Systems change, the councils. Protection and advocacy, Disability Rights Center. Research, university, and people themselves, SUFU. And the last group of people on our council are state reps. So people from children with special health care needs, Office of Child and Family Services, etc., Department of Labor, for instance. So representatives from the governor.
That's quite a combination.
It is. See why I say balance?
Right, right. Do you feel that sometimes, and I've experienced this, that the people that we're working with, the people with the disabilities, sometimes are sidelined in the discussions?
Yeah. I worry about that a lot. How do you get meaningful engagement? So, and what I mean by meaningful engagement is not having somebody sitting at the table just to sit there or say something that may or may be not be on topic. I mean, facilitating it so that an individual understands what's going on, understands what it might mean in their lives, and then be able to share that on equal footing with everybody else in the room. And that can be extremely intimidating when you have a commissioner in the room, for instance.
And also that this population notoriously is always being told no.
Yes. And they live in a world of plans, of
Right.
individual education plans, of person-centered plans, all these plans that, and rules that you and I don't have to live with.
Right. And it's overwhelming to me personally when I see some of these plans and what they have to go through. I can only imagine what goes through their minds.
There are people in this state who can't say, I want to eat lunch at 12. I want to have a snack at 3. That's not okay, and it's a rights violation, but it happens regularly because individuals living in systems like group homes, they're somewhat at the mercy of staff. And so here they are coming into our
the opinions
organization.
expressed here.
Yes, well,
no, it's important. It's important.
all
that we share
agencies are
this.
not like this,
Right.
but there are a few that are. Most agencies are not like that, but there are a few that
And this
are.
is why some of the transition changes that the rules are changing right
Oh.
now to work towards those goals.
That's right.
All right, so it's the time of our show for our weekly trivia question.
Okay.
And so I'll ask the question, we'll go to our midpoint identifier, and then we will come back and finish a discussion on something else, or start a discussion and then finish it. When did the term self-advocacy begin to identify individuals with developmental disabilities? This is Nonprofit Insider on WMPG, listener-supported radio at 90.9 and 104.1 FM, community radio of Southern Maine and Eastern New Hampshire. Joining us today is Nancy Cronin, Executive Director of the Maine Developmental Disabilities Council. So, the question was, when did the term self-advocacy begin to identify individuals with developmental disabilities?
I don't know. I can throw a guess out, and that would be probably in the 70s and 80s when we were trying to close institutions.
Actually, according to the first Texas First Project, the term self-advocacy can be traced back to the late 60s when young adults with disabilities began speaking out about taking an active role in planning their lives and the programs that supported them.
That's great.
It is. But you and I have had some real interesting discussions over the last couple of weeks about the concept of self-advocacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not exactly, at least in my opinion, what it's geared up to be.
No, and I think we struggle as a,
We're talking about self-advocates being people with developmental disabilities.
that's right.
Right.
And organizations such as mine, councils, that we are required to support self-advocacy in the DD Act. It's interesting to wonder what that means. We have sometimes thought that meant engaging people in the political process. And maybe that's a part of it. I think that probably is a part of it. But is self-advocacy speaking up for yourself to say, I want lunch at 12? And then how do you expect How do you explain that when you self-advocate, there are sometimes consequences and repercussions?
You mean actions and reactions?
Exactly. And that's very real. So when we look at the history of cultural change, for instance, the women's rights movement, it came from women saying, we want something different. This movement, in some ways right now, is coming from other people saying, we want you folks to organize. Well, that's great. How? Why? Okay.
What for?
What for? And then once they do organize and create their own identity, that might not be what we wanted. And we no longer have a right to say it because, it's their identity.
Right.
That's the purpose. But once you have a group that is organized, then that one person who's asking for lunch at a different time has at least peers to talk about their experience. And that's the power of social change. So we're looking at self-advocacy in really a twofold part. One is building people's ability to self-advocate for themselves and recognize the risks so they can choose sometimes not to, as well as building a base of an organization to support them while they do it so they don't fall.
And when we talk about the support of an organization, the support is a lot different than supporting an organization of non-disabled people.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And that's one reason the council is hoping that one day we don't fund self-advocacy organizations because it's a conflict of interest. Ideally, its self-advocacy organization is built up enough that they fund themselves through other ways. And then they come to the council and can say, Council, I don't agree with that position. And the council gets to say, well, why? And oh my, are we all different? We get to have those opportunities for us to really understand whether or not we are making a difference in people's lives. That's kind of risky from the council. It's a risky.
Yes.
It really is.
But if, all social change is a risk.
It is.
And you don't know until you find out whether it works or not.
No, and fundamentally, we do believe that everybody has gifts. It just so happens that for everybody to be able to share their gifts, sometimes you have to have a risk that you might not like what happens.
Do you want to hear one of my personal shticks?
Please. Always.
I have a difficult time with the term self-advocate.
Oh, I understand that. Yeah.
Okay.
Explain why.
I'm a self-advocate.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I may not need the support that a person with disabilities needs, but I speak up for myself, and I see it as just another label.
Yeah.
I mean, they're people.
That's right.
I don't know if you remember, but when we had John and Tyler on the show back in July, I mean, we said, what's the one message you want to give everybody? He said, we just want a chance.
Yes.
And, that's what this is all about.
It is.
If you had to change one thing that you could change right now with snapping your fingers, what would it be? You weren't expecting that question, were you?
Well, there's so many different ways I could answer that. Systemically, I would want a cash follows the person system, meaning I would want the individual themselves to be able to choose who they want to hire, why they want to hire, and live their lives.
When you talk about hiring for support for themselves.
For support for themselves.
Okay.
Right now, people are offered a menu of options, sort of, but they kind of fit into whatever box they're placed in. And that's not real life. So if I could change anything right now, I would change the system so that people had the ability to truly run their lives. Here's another thing I would change. If I could change it right now, I would change the anxiety. I'm saying this on radio. I would change the anxiety of some people who love in adults with developmental disability to recognize that they have a right to risk, that part of adulthood is being able to make a mistake and do something that may or may not be healthy. That's what I would do. Now, granted, I understand there's multiple sides of that. I'm not talking about...
Oh, absolutely.
But the right to risk is something that, at a basic place, some people are not having.
This is very tough stuff.
Oh, it's so hard. And it's impossible to know by saying one thing or advocating one way if it will actually help somebody the way we're hoping it will help. There can be, we're imperfect.
Now, these goals and visions, there's still a portion of the population that will not benefit from this. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Unfortunately.
Well, ideally, those who will benefit, their example will allow a trickle-down effect. You're talking about folks who have, there's no way of saying this well, extremely challenging functional limitations.
Right.
That maybe they need to literally stay in bed, for instance. Maybe they have some medical issues, whatever. Yeah, they're not necessarily going to be able to benefit completely of what we're talking about. However, if those who can benefit do, then they will change the world.
Right.
And that will affect the people who can't advocate for themselves as well. We are trying to change the world.
And if that means that somebody makes a decision that we don't necessarily like or agree to, but it's they want to do and nobody gets hurt in the process.
Yes, that would be right. And it also means that systemically, when the self-advocate organization makes a decision that advocates might have thought for many years wasn't a good idea, sometimes the advocates have to say, maybe I need to shift a little because that's not where this group is. So it's all about respect and really
You hit the nail on the head.
taking respect to your heart.
Right.
And living and walking the walk. If a group wants validly to do something,
Have a dance in the middle of the day.
say have a dance in the middle of the day, and we take into consideration, let's say that's when they have transportation, that's when they can get together. It's safe to have a dance at that time when it might not be safe in different times. Well, even though, in my heart, in my gut and head, I think to myself, adults don't have dances at 11 o'clock in the morning. That's not right. Well, but the truth is, the truth is that is the opportunity for this group right now. And instead of going to these people and saying, shame on you, that's not the right thing to do, I think I have to move over a little bit.
Right. And say, did you have fun?
I have to move over. We have to move over. So I think that one consequence that systems don't understand is when you ask a group of people to start advocating for themselves and they start changing, inevitably, so will we have to change.
Right.
And that is, it's really a nice idea to say, I want people to be self-advocates. But it's a whole different idea when you realize, oh my goodness, that means I have to do something different?
Absolutely. So if someone wanted to contact you or to get involved or send a check or whatever.
Great. Maine Developmental Disabilities Council. My personal email, I'll give it, nancy.e.cronin, CRONIN, @maine.gov.
Phone number?
207-287-4213.
And if you get a chance, you should go to the website and just look through some of their notes and some of the work that they do, because it really is incredible.
Google us.
Google you, yes. Good. All right. Well, I don't think we have time for you to ask me a question. Oh, my technical engineer is saying, if you want, do you have a question for me?
Yeah.
Okay.
How do you work to explain to an individual who might not understand a topic? How do you help them understand it so that without putting your own opinions in the mix so that they can self-advocate? In 1 minute, because that's an easy question, isn't it? No problem.
One of the things that I've experienced is that a good portion of discussions with these folks aren't at their level.
Yeah.
Where you really have to sit down and figure out what they understand and what parts they grasp at. And we do this at the SUFU board meeting on a regular period where we just stop and we go around the table and we say, did you understand what we're talking about? And if they didn't, what part didn't you understand? And everybody respects that, because at some point everybody is saying, we don't understand a certain part of this. To the point when we do our budget sheets, we no longer have revenue and expenses, but they grasp money in and money out. So we changed our budget sheets. Now we have some discussion about it.
That's great.
So it's getting to the common denominator or the level that they understand and then beginning the growth process from that. Did I answer that in a minute?
Brilliant. Wonderful.
Well, we're all
Respect.
in this. Absolutely. That's what it comes down to, that we need to respect these folks.
Yes.
Well, good. Well, great show. Thank you for being a guest.
Thank you for having me.
And for being here 6 hours early. Next week, we have a very, very special show. It's a musical group out of USM, and because I'll be on the road again, so I want to encourage everybody to take a little break. It's a nonprofit musical group, so it fits right in our agenda. Our music appears courtesy of Mike Hubbard. You can find Mike's music on www.michaelhubbardmusic.com. Check out Mike's website to see where he's playing this weekend. Thanks to Deb Danger, NPI's executive engineer. You can catch Deb on Morning Street Fridays at 6:30. If you know of a nonprofit that should be on the show, please email me at npi@davidunger.net. Nonprofit Insiders now on Facebook. Post questions or any other suggestions that you have. And past shows are archived at www.tcmgr.com NP Insider tab.